Hi, welcome to Parents League Presents. I'm Gina Malin, Executive Director of the Parents League New York, and I'm here today with Evie Gurney, our school advisor, who is an expert on middle and high school admissions. And prior to joining the Parents League, Evie was the placement director at the Bank Street School of Children, where she placed over 40 children every year in independent high schools, boarding schools, parochial schools, and public schools. So Evie, thank you for being here with us today, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about any advice for parents who are making the transition, their students making the transition from private to public school, and the admissions process, and how to start and what to do.
So there's a fair amount of chaos in the DOE currently, which I think is driving a bit of these families to come talk to the Parents League to explore independent schools, because the challenge of a family in a public school is they will not get any help from their public school administration in applying out to private school. It's as if they're two separate worlds and they don't really exist. So this is where families really turn to us. And we kind of just go through the step-by-step the process of applying to private schools in New York City, or maybe they're considering boarding, that's a whole other world. Maybe we go through all those steps with them, and then we dive deeper as the school year goes on, and we offer a lot of support. Mm-hmm. The idea is to really demystify the components that go into a private school application. Everything is the same for each family, no matter if they're coming from public or private, except for the information that comes from the school, specifically teacher recommendations. So that looks very different coming from a public school and coming from a private school.
Is the timeline different applying from to a private school and from a public school?
If you're applying from a middle public school and a middle private school, mm-hmm. very different, and the timelines do not line up at all. So that's a really big challenge for families, because they will get their private school information months before they get their public school information, and they often have to make a decision about the private school before they even hear from the public schools. So that's very challenging. For high school, it seems to line up pretty well, and they should have all their information when it's time to make the decision.
Okay. And what about testing?
So they're testing for private schools, which is completely different than testing for, say, for example, the specialized public high schools. Mm-hmm. So the two types of tests that private schools will want is the SSAT, the secondary school admissions test, or the IC, the independent school entrance exam. So parents can choose either of those or do both of those. Mm-hmm. They are now able to, in both cases, get their scores beforehand and decide what to send to schools. So you can test multiple times, you can hold up the scores, you can see them, and choose the best set to send to schools. So they have a lot more flexibility than they did even a couple of years ago.
Now, you mentioned, though, that at a public school, the administration does not help with private school applications. Does the administration help a family who's applying out to another public school?
So they are a well-oiled machine mm-hmm. when it comes to applying out to public school, and it makes a lot of sense because all that data is in a system that mm-hmm. pre-exists, mm-hmm. and they just feed it into the system, whatever updated information they have. For private schools, they have to send grades, an official transcript, mm-hmm. they have to do the teacher recommendations, they have to send any test scores they have. So it's actually paperwork that they're not used to doing mm-hmm. and they didn't sign up for. So parents have to, so this is our one piece of advice for parents mm-hmm. who are doing this: be really nice to your administrators and your teachers at your public mm-hmm. school, and let them know early mm-hmm. that you're doing this, mm-hmm. and then they can get to know your child and give you what you need.
Mm-hmm. Evie, you had mentioned teacher recommendations. So should a family go first to their teacher, guidance counselor, or other administrator, or does it just depend, is it case by case depending on a family's relationship?
Well, they have to have the math teacher recommendation, they have to have humanities / English teacher recommendation. So they have to approach those two teachers directly, and I would recommend that you do it very gratefully and early. And then there's usually a person assigned to do the administrative, like the school guidance counselor or the assistant principal or even the principal.
Is there one piece that's most important?
It's different for every school. It's different for every kid. You know, test scores are a factor. The interview is huge, but if you have an introvert, I would not worry about that one bit because the interviewers are experts at extracting information from these kids.
Please join the Parents League. You can join online at parentsleague.org. And if you'd like to watch more of our videos, follow us on Facebook. Thank you so much.